Zambia was up 6.1% in US dollar terms. Now, after declines that we saw ahead of the elections, a little bit more positive sentiment post-elections.
Yeah, well, firstly, let's touch on the currency. I mean, the currency strengthened 6.5% against the US dollar last week. The prior weeks leading up to that and up to the elections, as you said, it took quite a bit of a hammering. So people were scared that SATA, the newly elected president, was going to be quite anti-business. And the things he said last week proved to be kind of against that. So some favoritism back to the currency there. Rather flat in local terms, only -3%. So nothing much to read.
Okay, so he's not going to do anything, for instance, about repealing windfall taxes. He's looking for a bit more of a managed partnership with the Chinese, saying the right things. But just today, revoking a deal that First Rand had entered into with Finance Bank of Zambia. So already we're starting to see his iron-fistedness coming to the fore.
Correct. I mean, we saw the kwacha a bit weaker again today. So I think it's still very, very early days in SATA's presidency. So we'll have to wait and see how this one plays out. But yeah, very contradictory, as you say.
All right, staying in the region, Botswana up 4.7% in US dollar terms, almost 1% in Pula terms. Now, the Pula's also gained a bit of ground against the dollar.
Yeah, it did. I mean, there's no major economic news or reason behind that. Reason for the stock market strength last week, we saw G4S finally have the share split of 10-for-1. The name rallied 22%. I mean, that's a major contributor behind the movement in the market there. Also had a new listing in Botswana, so that was quite interesting. New African Properties. That name also fared quite well from its IPO price, rallied about 3%, 2.5%. Yeah.
Right, Mauritius has also been lifted by good results coming from the two major banks, State Bank of Mauritius, Mauritius Commercial Bank, up 3.3% in dollar terms. Now, I'm fascinated because we know that Mauritius is very vulnerable to shocks that come out of Europe, and it's really been trading downwards because of all the negativity and the debt issues in Europe and the austerity measures underway in Europe.
Correct. I mean, firstly, last week with those results of MCB and SBM surprised nicely to the upside. I mean, we're looking at 8% and 20% profit after tax respectively for the two banks. So I think that's what drove markets last week. I mean, MCB had 51% of market volume last week. Market volume was about $5.5 million US dollars. So it's very quiet from a trading point of view. But today we saw it go weaker as well. Global market sell-off today continued. Yeah, so very, very reliant on that, but I think it's purely moved higher last week because of those banking numbers.
All right, other bourses that have been lifted by changing sentiment internationally. South Africa, I mean, from seeing that sell-off of bonds because of the risk aversion, the market started to recover somewhat last week. What sort of yo-yoing patterns are we going to see coming out of these markets?
Oh, it's very difficult because we are so dictated to by the European markets. I mean, European and America alike, once they seize, as you know, we're definitely going to catch a cold. So it all depends what happens there. Rand been very volatile, bond market's been very volatile, equity market's extremely volatile. So we kind of just have to wait and see, and we're at the mercy of their hands.
Right, let's talk about a smaller country that also did well. Malawi up 0.7% in local currency terms. There's some rumors there about Vodacom and their local telco. There's some stories about Standard Bank also rallying 5%. Tell us about that.
Yeah, Standard Bank did quite well last week. Very low volumes in Malawi, obviously. Look, it's still rumors at this point that telecom networks going to be partnering with Vodacom, so very early stages, no discussions have been made yet. Volumes were low in that name as well, but that was a major driver behind activity last week in Malawi.
Okay, the worst performers, no surprises here. Kenya down 5.4%. As I said earlier on, I mean, since the start of the year, share prices declined 27%. So it's a cheap market to enter into, but foreigners are just staying away at the moment.
No, correct. I mean, foreigners haven't been major sellers in the market for the last, say, 3-4 months, but over the last month, we've seen them come in and be quite actively involved in the sell side of that market. I mean, the shilling now is standing at, well, reached a low last week, 104 to the dollar, all-time low. And the banks, the Central Bank of Kenya is in a very precarious situation. I mean, they can't really raise interest rates because of consumers. You know, they're struggling badly enough as it is. But with the currency where it is, it's only going to affect inflation badly. So it's very, very tough times for Kenya at the moment.
I mean, inflation at 17.3%. That's worrying. Zimbabwe's industrial index. Now, we're seeing a sell-off in a big counter like Econet, but generally the blue chips haven't been doing well. It's rather the smaller caps that have performed on this particular index.
Correct. But that's only largely as a result of the liquidity in those smaller caps. Very difficult to come by the name if you're looking for one of the smaller shares, so you have to push the price up by 10, 20, 15, 20%. You know, it's very liquidity driven, unfortunately. Econet 9% weighting in the index. That's the result of last week's sell-off. Yeah.
Yeah, and the week before was Delta and ICA as well.
Correct.
Tanzania down 1.3% in dollar terms. Is it a currency issue here?
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very flat. I mean, up 0.1% in local terms. Very quiet. Liquidity was very, very low last week.
Okay, Nigeria's also been down for much of the year. The Naira even breached 159 Naira to the dollar. Some people are saying that the central bank has lost its resolve to defend the currency. That's one issue to consider. We also know that the recapitalization deadline, 30th of September, was last week, Friday. And by Friday, we'd started to see some recovery in the banking stocks. But in general, what is it investors are looking for? What sort of information do they want to come out of Nigeria?
Well, they just want to be reassured that the whole recapitalization issues will be put to bed quite soon. But fortunately, there's still one or two banks that are in a bit of trouble there. But yes, the banking stocks did perform exceptionally well from about Wednesday last week. I mean, Nigeria has a certain trading limit up and limit down rule whereby the stock can't trade more than 5% up or 5% down in the day. And from, as I said, from Wednesday, all the banking stocks were trading about 5% up. That's because it's gone relatively well with the recapitalization of the banks. There's also rumours floating around last week that Standard Bank were looking to buy GTB, Guaranteed Trust Bank of Nigeria. So there's some positivity returning to some of the banking names. Obviously, they're trading at much cheaper levels. The valuations are looking quite decent. So it's all about picking your levels at this stage in Nigeria.